Hello, Aragon Dons. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our presentation with Holocaust survivor and author Tova Friedman. Please be respectful and listen carefully. Please do not use your phones. And enjoy this amazing human being we know as Tova Friedman. Ms. Friedman, take it away.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you for being here. Hard to see you individually, but I see you as a group, and that's really great. So here, we're waving and yeah. Thank you so much. So I want to tell you why it's so important for me to talk to you. I speak to all kinds of people, but the people that I like most of all are students, because students are going to grow up, right? And you're going to go to college and you're going to meet people and they're going to say it didn't happen. So you will be probably the last generation that it's still going. I'm sorry, I'm not in person. I didn't fly out to California, but it's next best thing. There are a lot of people out there who claim that this is just fantasy and that humanity cannot be as cruel. I want to tell you it's not true. It's not true. I witnessed probably the worst, and afterwards I witnessed the best. So I want to share really both of these things with you. One of the things that it's so fabulous for me to speak to you is that the first thing that Hitler's regime did was kill the children. Now, can I ask you the age of these children? Because I don't want them to all yell out, but give me the idea, please.
They're all high school.
Yes, between 14 and 18.
Okay, 14 and 18. Okay. Well, maybe had you been in my position, 14 and 18 would have still been an okay age because they would keep you alive to work. Children, those children who were like 0 or just born to 12 and 13 were killed immediately. And I want to tell you why. First, they were killed because children to the German regime were useless. They couldn't work. All they needed was they had to get food, so they had to eat, and they needed attention from the parents maybe. So the parents couldn't work. So they were killed. But another reason, probably more important, they shouldn't be witnesses. Hitler wanted, one of the big things was get rid of all witnesses, leave no witnesses. Children are the best witnesses because they may not see everything. They may not understand everything, but they see a lot and they remember. And then when they grow up, they will remember what they saw. And maybe some of them would even join the army and fight against the regime, because Hitler thought he would conquer the world and he'll be here forever. You know, first Europe and then America, and then just the whole world was going to be his. So why have children who may grow up and join an army against him? So in my town, there were hundreds and hundreds of children. At the end of the war, 5 children were left. 5. Can you imagine? 5. I am the youngest. I'm number 5. So you can imagine that very few people are left to tell the story. In the beginning of the war, there were 15,000 adults, Jewish. I'm talking about the Jewish population, 15,000. At the end of the war, there were only 200. So you can imagine now, they all died of old age. And those who were, those who could talk about it, which were not many, because they were so traumatized, told their children, and now their great-grandchildren can tell the story, but there are very few witnesses left. They can see it. So in a way, I feel a terrific obligation. I'm going to take some tea. To tell the story, because 1.5 million of children between the age of newly born until 12 and 13 and 14, if you were a small 14, you know, a little shorter, and you didn't look like a worker, they were gassed or they were drowned. Many of them were shot, and they disappeared. 1.5 million children. When I went back to Auschwitz to show it to my grandchildren, there were ashes still available, and we made a prayer over the ashes. Hitler kept a very accurate list, so we know the children, we know their names, but we don't have their pictures, so we have no idea who they are. So when I speak here, I am one of the children that just by luck survived. And I want to tell you, it was luck, because we weren't richer, we weren't smarter. I'll take you step by step so you can sort of understand this. And my first memory is when I was very young, about 2 or 3, because they were such strong memories. When you think about your own childhood, when you think back, I'm sure there's certain things that you were very young, but you still remember. Maybe the first time you went swimming, or your first birthday. There's certain things that you can't not remember. And another thing, my mother was with me a lot, and she reinforced the things that I saw. So by the way, let me just add to it. So the children were killed first. The second population was killed were the elderly. Again, why the elderly? And who's considered an elderly? Anybody over 50 was to Hitler elderly, because they couldn't work as well. You know, so the people that were left alive, that Hitler supported and wanted them to stay alive, as long as they had strength. So people like my parents, who were in their 30s, early 30s, late 20s, and people in their 30s, and some people in their 40s, as long as you can tolerate heavy labor, because he had factories of ammunition everywhere, and you were sent there to work from morning to night. So the elderly were killed almost right away. I remember the death of my grandmother. We lived in a ghetto. Like, I'm sure you know what a ghetto is, but it was a ghetto where they took all the Jews and they put them in a very tiny area. And it was very crowded, 10, 20, 30 people in a tiny space. We had one bathroom for about 20 or 30 people. And I spent most of my time under the table because it was safe, and because there was no other space, and because I could eat there also. But I remember when they came in and they took my grandmother, my mother's mother, and they just shot her outside the house. Then I remember when my father came in and he said to my mother, I just put them on a truck. I was 4.5 by then. I knew what a truck was. I knew what happened because my father, you see, another thing, my parents talked in front of me, never protected me because they felt it was very important for me to know what's going on because my mother anticipated that one day I'll be alone without her protection and I have to know what's going on. I have to be observant. I have to understand. I have to understand where there is danger and I have to understand where it's safe. So she taught me. So when she talked, I listened. And I knew that my father had dug graves. They dug these gigantic, long communal graves. He dug the graves for his own parents. He wasn't alone. There were other people, other men, some women also who were strong. You know, he was in early 30s. Of course, he could do that, physical labor. So I knew that now I had no grandparents because if his parents were put on a truck, which were my grandparents, they were put on the truck in order to take to the graves. They were usually, the way the process was the same everywhere. It wasn't anything special in our town. They would undress the people and the people would face the graves and they would be shot in the back and fall into the graves. It was very easy. They didn't even have to push the people into the graves. They fell themselves. And then the workers would cover it up with sand, with earth. So I knew very quickly that I had no grandparents. But you know, I never cried because my mother had said to me, you're not allowed to cry. Crying, first of all, was a way to find your hiding place. And I think that every parent taught the children that not to cry, to control yourself, or the parent would put their hand on the mouth in order to not to allow the sound to come out. Because sometimes, you know, you never knew who was passing by when you were living in a ghetto or even hiding somewhere. So I learned very quickly what to do, what not to do. This camp was the labor camp, and most of the people were taken to a place called Treblinka. Now, I don't know if you know some of the names. They're these camps that were known for only one thing, and that's extermination. You weren't kept there long. If you were as soon as you arrived, those who were under 12 and 13 or 14 went straight to the extermination, to the gas chambers. Anybody over 40 or 50 went straight there. The middle people, the one from 14, 15, 16 to 35 or something like that, were saved for a while because they were used as labor, as I told you. So my town, they closed it, and they sent most of the people of those cattle cars, and there were very few people left. Another thing which I want to let you know, which is psychologically interesting, how do you kill a people? It's a very big job. First you kill their children, and then you kill the grandparents, and then you kill all their teachers, by the way. They killed all our rabbis, all our doctors. So we didn't even have a Jewish doctor to take care of us. And the German doctors would never come. So a lot of diseases broke out without any doctors. So it's another way that sick people or weak people, which is mostly the elderly and the children, died. They had systems of killing people that were just mind-boggling. You know, that system worked in every different camp. That's how they could kill 1.5 million children and 6 million total of Jews. They also killed others, gypsies and gay people and mentally ill people. Excuse me. You know, Hitler decided to only leave people who were going to have what he called special kind of Aryan blood, whatever that is. Not only did he want them to have a certain kind of blood, but they had to look a certain way. They had to be tall. They had to be blonde. You know, if you ever go to a museum, there are all kinds of museums. I'm sure there must be one where you can, not far from where you live, somehow, or the teachers can take you. They had instruments to measure if you are the right type of a person to survive. It went to the point of, we would call it now mental illness. Hitler was mentally ill, but an entire country supported him. So what do you say about a country that supports a mentally ill person? So in each camp, each ghetto, more people were killed, and those that survived were certain type of people. Pure luck. I survived with my father and mother, and we were the cleanup crew, because as I told you, he wanted no witnesses. So he was, you know, it's another thing. Once in a while, Red Cross would come, International Red Cross. So before they came, we cleaned up the place. And there wasn't a spot. There was a lot of shooting, of course, outside. You couldn't walk on the street without being shot. It was too dangerous to even step out of your house. But when the Red Cross came, everything was clean. And me, my mother and father, and about 50 other people were the cleanup crew. They wouldn't clean up their own. They didn't cover up their own murder. We covered up their murder for them, under duress, of course, with guards with guns. After we cleaned everything up, my mother said, "Oh, we're useless now. We're going to be shot," but we weren't, because he needed my parents to work in an ammunition factory. So somehow by luck, I went with them. Kids were slowly getting rid of. You couldn't be sick. You couldn't be slow. You couldn't cry. You couldn't do a lot of things. You had to behave in a certain way. For some reason, I made it, and we went to the next camp. The next camp was, see, this was our own hometown, and it was ghetto. We went to what is called a labor camp. There they did nothing, but parents would go in the morning, my mother and father, and worked in an ammunition factory. The kids, there were very few left. I would say 25, 30, that's it. Also survived somehow. We were roaming the street, looking for food, and being by yourself. I was about 5. Extremely scary, because there were these big towers around that camp where the Germans with their machine guns were watching us. And my mother taught me how to behave. Again, survival skills. She said to me, no eye contact. Become invisible. When you see a German coming towards you, step away immediately. Let him pass. Don't look at him. Look down. You He should never recognize you. You know, eye contact is recognition. Some, you know, when you wear a mask, which we do, or we did for such a long time, if you knew the person well, you recognize their eyes, even with a mask. I know you had that experience. I did. People I didn't know well, I didn't recognize their eyes. I didn't know who they were. So it's the same thing. Our recognition. I are very, very personal. So my mother said, no eye contact. You shouldn't recognize your eyes. And in other words, she taught me survival skills. And then one day I heard, or she heard more than I did, that the word selection was very common. They would come once a week and select some people for death. And you never know why. This time we heard that they were selecting children, whatever was left, whatever kids were left. So my parents, this is the very few times that I was hidden. Very few times. This was one of the times. There was a crawl space in the little room that we lived in, and she put me in there, and she came in with me. And through there was like a little window there, like a hole maybe, I don't know what it was. I could look out. All the friends that the kids I used to play with were put on a truck, and I knew where they were going. My mother was very scared that I'll cry, so she put her hand to my mouth very tightly so that I shouldn't make any sound. I wasn't going to, but she couldn't take a chance. And that's from then on, there were no more children left. The kids were taken to those graves that were dug before by their parents. So let me just summarize it in a way. Able-bodied people would dig graves for their own parents and for their children. There were no children left. So from then on, I couldn't be on the street. I shouldn't be seen. So I stayed in a room. My mother locked me in every day, put something over the windows. I shouldn't be seen. And I had to stay there a few weeks. I didn't know how long I would be there. And every day she'd come at night and give me food. And during the day, I have no idea what happened in my head, because we have no one to talk to, no one to explain anything, no one to share. Your mind goes blank. This is why, by the way, in a prison, if you have like an isolation, people will do anything not to be isolated, because it's such a difficult thing to be completely without human beings. But I was like this a whole day, but I knew that my parents were coming in at night, and they stayed, took me out, and we ate and we talked. But in the daytime, I was locked up because they had to go to work. One day, my mother says, you don't have to go to this room anymore. You can go outside. I want to tell you, I was elated. I haven't seen the sunshine. I haven't seen the sky. And I jumped out, and I was outside, and I saw my mother packing. I said, what are you packing? She said, we're going to Auschwitz. Here I told you that they would have a camp, have people there, kill most of them, take the leftover people to the next place, and clean up the first place as if nothing happened. Same process. They were going to clean up this labor camp and take everybody, whoever was left, to Auschwitz. A lot of people in that labor camp had died from starvation, from being shot, and they were sent to extermination camp, but they hadn't closed the camp yet. Now they completely closed it, and whoever was left was going to Auschwitz. I was exactly 5.5, almost 6. I was almost 6. It was August. No, it was May. And you know, I was pleased. I heard about Auschwitz, but anything was better than being locked up like that in the dark. It had to be in the dark. You couldn't have any light in that room. They shouldn't be seen through the windows. And that's how my mother saved me. She taught me. I was very obedient. When she said to me, don't go near the window, don't even look out, don't even come near it. I didn't. I stayed most of the time in bed, sleeping, crying quietly. Not a sound came out. Don't forget, I had nothing. I had no food. I had nothing. But somehow you make it. I don't know how, but I guess if you have to, you do. But when she said Auschwitz, I knew about it, but I knew that nobody comes back from Auschwitz. But it didn't have an emotional reaction. I was so happy to be out of the dark room. And we all walked to the cattle cars were waiting. This was the first time that my parents were separated. My father went to a camp called Dachau. I don't know if you studied Dachau. Dachau was in Germany. And you're saying yes, they know Dachau. Okay, thank you. I don't have a reaction, so maybe you'll be my reactor, okay? So I can, okay. I'm sorry I can't see the kids better. It would have been, I would love to see their faces. I'm sorry, I see you like far away. So maybe when you ask questions or anyhow, so they were separated. My father was crying. This is the second time I saw him cry. The first time when he came and he told he put his parents on the truck. Tears, he wasn't crying out loud, tears were coming down. Here he was crying out loud. My mother was holding me, and my father said, be a good girl. And he disappeared. He was on the same train, but in a different cattle car, you know, these cattle cars. He was with the men, I was with the women. All I can tell you, the trip was 36 hours. Now, I didn't know about that. I found out later on. There's a lot of things I didn't know. The date I arrived, how old I was, how many people were. I learned that afterwards. A child doesn't know that. And apparently there were hundreds of people inside the cattle car. We were very close together. And the worst thing, there was no food, no water, terrific heat. And the worst thing is, for a child like myself, I didn't know where to go to the bathroom. I couldn't move. We were so tight. And then I realized from the smell that you go where you stand. Everybody else did. So you can imagine 36 hours of this odor and on feces and heat, terrible heat and thirst. That's how we arrived to Auschwitz, standing. We were standing a whole time. But I remember my body was resting on the other person's body. I didn't even have to use my feet because the pressure of the bodies would keep you up. There was no place to fall. They were so tight. The door opened, just opened, and with a lot of light, I remember, and noise. And the thing that terrified me to this day, by the way, were the German shepherds, because I was their height. Don't forget, till now, I had no eye contact with a single German soldier. My mother told me never to do it. I never did. I was too scared to look up. She explained to me, why not? Why eye contact is such a dangerous thing. They'll recognize you, they'll see you. So I never did. But I did have eye contact with the terrible dogs. They had muzzles on and they had saliva coming out of their mouth. And I remember the hands of the German guards with the straps holding on to the dogs. That was so scary for me. And I said to my mom, I'm going to be killed. They're going to kill me. They said, no, they won't kill you because they only kill when you run and you're not going to run. Another lesson she taught me, no eye contact, stand still, never, ever look like you're running because any quick movement, you'd be shot, just shot. Then they addressed us right there by the train. And I said, Mom, why are they addressing us? She said, you know, if our bodies aren't perfect, that's what's going to happen to us. She pointed to the gas chambers and the crematorium that was right near the train tracks. Because earlier I had said to her, what is this smell, this terrible smell? She said, those are body burning. She did not protect me. That's how she thought she's protecting me. And she was right. She turned out to be right later on when I had to be alone. And so there was inspection and we made it somehow. And I don't know to this day, by the way, I wrote a book. Do the kids know about the book? Okay. Oh, thank you. I get a thumbs up from your teacher, right? Yeah. It's great conversation. And in the book, Malcolm, who is my co-writer, is a reporter, and he does terrific research. That's what he does. A reporter researches. He has to be, everything he writes has to, it's truth. He can't make up stories. So he tried to find out why it was that in my transport, they didn't take, there were me and I think one more person, child, but I think it was just me. They didn't take me to kill me. Somebody said that maybe because it was a Sunday, we arrived, I didn't know that either. I read it in a book. I arrived on a Sunday, and the Germans, Sunday was the day of rest, which is ironic. I have no idea what Bible they used to have Sunday a day of rest. And they had four crematoriums going and gas chambers, and they didn't want to open up another one, and the others were full. It was about 6 months before the end of the war, and they were speeding up the process of killing because their aim was to kill every single person, so there should be no witnesses. So that's what I heard. I don't know. All I know is they shaved my head and took away my clothes, gave me some other clothes, and I came into the barracks. If anybody will ever go to Auschwitz or to any of those camps, they are replicas of the barracks, because when the Germans fled, and when the Russians came in, they set most of the barracks on fire. But if you are left, and you can see it. So in the barracks, we got a middle bunk. There were three tiers. We got the middle one. And then my mother began to teach me again survival skills. No bathroom. I said, what do you mean no bathroom? She says, you only go twice a day with the adults. I said, but what if I have to go in the middle? She said, you can't. You will learn to hold it in or you'll be shot. So I learned to hold it in. Again, a survival skill. You can't decide to go to the bathroom. You can't do anything without the okay of the guards. Absolutely nothing. Then she said to me, you're going to get a bowl, a tin bowl, and a cup, a tin cup, and a spoon. If you lose any of this, you'll get no food, because the people who gave us food twice a day, like a little bit of watered down soup, it looked like light coffee, but it was just terrible. I mean, it was just cold, and nothing in it, and a tiny piece of bread. They never looked at your faces because you weren't the person. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you before that they shaved my head before we entered the barrack. They took my clothes, they gave me something to wear, took off my shoes. I had braids. They cut my braids and they shaved my head. So we really weren't people. That's how they could kill us, because we weren't human. So that the person who gave you the food didn't look at you, didn't know you, and they just keep. If you don't have a utensil to put the food in, you'll be starving. And the people stole them so they can have 2 or as many as 3, all you needed. So my mother taught me to hide it. So here, no bathroom, hide this, don't cry, and make yourself invisible. There were no other children. I don't know where the children were. I was with adults. At one time, I fell into the latrine because the bathrooms were like flat boards, gigantic, long boards. They were probably as long as your auditorium is. I can't see very well, but at least one side, the whole side, with gigantic holes in it. Well, I was 5.5. I fell right in there. And my mother had to figure out how to pull me out. I had no hair, and I was up to the waist in feces almost. I mean, you can imagine. Well, within, I don't know how long it took, I got very ill. It could be from the germs and from the terrible things that you get being, inside a latrine, right? And that's when they took me away from my mother. Now, I usually what they do with people, they kill them because sick people could not live. They won't allow sick people around. Again, I told you, uselessness, no reason to be alive. But they put me into like a hospital without doctors. They closed the doors and they opened it up when you were well, without a doctor, without medicine, without anything. I became well. Years later, my mother told me I had scarlet fever and diphtheria at the same time. I remember how sick I felt. And for days, I didn't let anybody know how sick I was. I was afraid they'll kill me. I knew it until I couldn't see anymore because my eyes were full of pus. I still remember in my teeth, I couldn't open up my mouth because of pus. And then they noticed and they called somebody and they took me away. But I just got, I got well a few weeks later. I don't remember much about the hospital, because I must have had very high fever. But I did remember screaming and crying and yelling, but nothing else. And all of a sudden, a woman comes in and she takes my hand. And I said, I want to go to my mother. She says, oh, no, no more. She took me and she took me to a children's camp. Well, now all of a sudden I saw children. People, some of them I recognized from the camp. And I said, oh my God, all these children are here. So, and she left me. And the first thing what happened when I arrived, don't forget, I had no hair, right? I was bald. Some kind of clothing that I don't know what it was, some kind of a dress hanging. They tattooed me. I arrived on my own with her, one child, and there were other children. Then I heard somebody calling, get online, get online. I said, oh, I'll eat. Online meant food. So I was pushing to be the first, but I didn't. Then when I got to the front, I saw it wasn't food, it was the tattoo. And that's when I got my tattoo, 27,633, with an A for Auschwitz. And the woman who tattooed me was a Jewish woman. She was about 18, 19. To me, she was adult. And she said to me, you know, what's your name? I told her. She said, forget about your name. You don't have that name anymore. This is your name. Don't forget, I couldn't read or write. I didn't know what 27,600. Look how many words. 27,633. I was almost 6 by then. And I said, what is that? She says, this is what you have to remember. So I learned it like a phrase, because I didn't know what 7, what 8, what 2. I didn't know those things. I didn't know the corresponding. I couldn't read my tattoo. Somebody hadn't told me what it was. A different life started for me without my mom. I was hungrier than ever, because before that, she would give me some of her portion. And I walked around the whole time memorizing that tattoo, because one of the things she told me, follow rules. If you don't follow the rules, you'll be very hurt. So here we are. I memorized the number. And not only this, but I had to memorize the number of the girl sleeping with me in the same bunk, because she died in the middle of the night. And I was only scared that they will call her number. Now, I didn't know her number, but I memorized the phrase. At one time, I got a gift, a piece of bread, which was absolutely the best gift on earth. It was in a little bag, you know, and it's going to be, I said, I'm going to keep this bread until I'm starving. Then I'll have some. And I hid it under my little, my top, whatever I was wearing. But in the middle of the bread said, happy birthday, 6th birthday. So I had I said, oh, now I know my age. I'm 6 years old. I didn't know that before. Okay, so here I am, 6th birthday. And my, by then I'm quite savvy. There were younger children than I was. I understood what was going on. It was pretty, let me tell you some of the things that kids would talk about a little bit, just a little bit. And it's not from cruelty. It's the world you live in. One, let's say 5, 6-year-old will walk over to a 4-year-old and say, I know your mom. I just saw your mom and dad. I know them. And the 4-year-old would say, you do not. You don't even know what city I come from. You don't even know my name. What do you mean you saw my parents? Let me show you. So the 6-year-old would take the 4-year-old, move the child over to the window and show them the smoke and see, this is your mom. This is your dad. Maybe your grandparents are following. So the 4-year-old knew what he meant, and he started screaming and crying. I just want to show you that we all knew what was going on, even from the youngest child. You know, it's adults always think kids don't know anything. Kids know everything. Sometimes they may not be able to verbalize because they don't have the language sometimes, but they know. Their minds know what's going on. So we knew that. I knew that when they called and said to us, you're going to have a delicious breakfast. Don't forget, we were starving for months already, starving. I knew that they were going to take us to the gas chamber because that's the style. The barrack next to me had already gone to the gas chamber. There were no kids left. I walked in one day and there were no kids. And I said, oh, I know where they were. I know I won't see them again. So when they told us we're going to have a good breakfast, meaning something sweet, it was like a porridge, like a cereal. It was delicious to us. Probably the best meal I've had, who knows how long. Sweet and warm. And I said, oh, I guess we're going to the gas chambers. But I didn't care because the hunger was so great that I just wanted to eat. After we ate, we got dressed, whatever we had on, everything we had on, because it was freezing out. And we started walking and walking. In the middle of the walk, I heard a voice, my name. I said, oh, who could be calling my name? I had forgotten my name. Oh, it was my mother. She said, where are you going? I said, to the gas chambers. And all the women were screaming and crying because their kids were in the same group. And I said, why are they crying and screaming? I thought everybody goes to the gas chamber, every Jewish child. That's how I remember. That was my life, my life. We got there, and it's a gigantic waiting room, gigantic cement floor with hooks all around with numbers. And they say to you, remember where you're putting your clothes. So when you come out from the showers, you'll get your clothes. I knew that people don't come out back from the showers, but I really didn't know. I didn't know what death was. I mean, I was 6, almost 6.5 by then, 6. So I undressed, and then we were cold, freezing, waiting for hours and hours. We had no idea why they sent us back. Again, another mystery. And on the way back, the parents were still outside. And I hear a voice, my name, what happened? And I said, oh, they couldn't do it this time. They'll do it next time. As if it's normal. We went back. Again, timing is very hard. I don't know how long it took. My mother shows up. I hardly recognize her. She looks terrible. She's swollen. And she just looks like she's just about to die. And this is what she says to me. They are chasing us all. They're putting us in line. And we're all going into Auschwitz. I'm sorry, we're leaving Auschwitz, going to a different camp, into Germany, because the Russians are coming. And they don't want any witnesses. They don't want any of us to stay here. And then she's looked at me. She said, you know what? You will survive this walk. I won't. And I don't want you to stay alive in a world like this. She said, this is no world for children. She said, and then she said these words to me. Will you die with me in Auschwitz? I said, yes. I was so happy to see her. Took my hand, and we snuck out of the barrack because it was chaos by then. The Germans were screaming and yelling and shooting. And the woman who took care of us, I don't know what happened to her. She disappeared. And then my mother took my hand, and we made our way into a hospital for women, which was close to our barrack. She must have made this plan I had no idea, And she walked around, she found a corpse, and she hid me with the corpse. And she told me, try not to breathe much. And I didn't. And she said to me, no matter what happens, no matter what you hear, do not get uncovered. I'll uncover you. I'm the only one. Again, I obeyed orders. I knew that she wasn't far away. I knew that she'll save me. I just had this trust in her. And then she disappeared. I was all covered. And then I hear the Germans coming in, and they looked at every corpse. And if the corpse looked half alive or something, or the person looked alive, they shot it. somebody was standing over my bed. I didn't say anything. And I stopped breathing almost. So I didn't want that. I understood that the blanket cannot move up and down. And the person moved on. And I don't know what happened after that, but I began to smell smoke. And there was screaming and yelling from the people who were there. And there were a lot of sick people who were trying to get out because the place was burning. I wasn't moving because my mother told me not to get uncovered. But after I would have probably choked to death. She uncovered me and she said, "They're gone. You can come out of bed." All the Germans had run away because the Russians were really on the way. And there was liberation. They came 2 days later, January 27th, 1945. And I and my mother survived with other people. And we waited for the Russians to come and open the electrified, there was electrified barbed wire to rescue us. Had they come up a week later, I wouldn't have been here anymore. So I'm here to tell the story and for you to remember, so that if anybody ever tells you it didn't happen, you're the witnesses. I am probably one of the last witnesses, but you are my witnesses. And I have some questions if there is time. I have the questions you send me. And I just want to thank you. Do you have other questions or do you want the questions that you send me?
The questions that we sent you are good to go.
Okay. The first question, what do I want the audience to take away most? I want the audience to, to remember. I want you to remember, because, I'm going to be 85 and who knows how long I'll be here. And I'm one of the youngest people. Every day we lose more survivors. Old age. That's the way we were made. We're obsolete at a certain, our bodies become obsolete at a certain time. So for you to remember and to tell others and to be aware what can happen if we don't stop crazy people around the world. Do you know, Hitler could have been stopped when he began, not later. He was too strong. He was a crazy man. And he decided he could have been stopped when he took all the mentally ill Germans. He took, by the way, not only Jews or other people, his own people, but because they were mentally ill, he would bring those trucks to the hospitals of mentally ill and gas them inside the trucks. He would use, the what is it? The exhaust. He would turn around the exhaust. Anybody could,
yeah.
Right? Anybody could have stopped him then. He didn't have. I don't think there were yet gas chambers or anything. Nobody stopped him. It's your job. When I asked my father years later, why did you get involved with all this? I mean, you just let this crazy man, of course, he was in Poland, but they could have had movements in Poland and so forth. He said, "Oh, I thought somebody else will do it." You have to, okay, so that's the first thing. There is nobody else. It's you. What is the biggest issue now about anti-Semitism? First of all, it's very scary. Very scary. Do you know that I spoke at a college where there were no Jews at all? Maybe one or two. I forgot what, Midwest somewhere. And they had an anti-Semitic parade or something. They didn't even know. People have to get to know each other. That's the only thing we could survive in any way, whether you're Afro-American, whether you're Chinese, or I don't know. whether you're gay, whether you're whatever is on the fringes, whether you're disabled, once you get to know each other. And the anti-Semitism, the only thing I can say is I'm very proud that I'm a Jew and that I have a country that will protect us like Israel. And I have faith in the American government that the government will not allow anything really like this to happen again. It will not happen again. And we do have to fight the anti-Semites. I mean, I have no idea. I wish I could meet some. I live in a place where that I don't know any. But I would love, New York, New Jersey, I would love to have a conversation to find out what it is that I have done that upsets them, that I deserve to die, What made you become a therapist? Well, I was also a teacher at the university. I became a therapist when I decided I want to leave this place a little better than I found it. With all these ugliness, I know that I didn't help everybody, but I helped a lot to live a better life. And that makes me feel that I wasn't saved in vain. That had a purpose. It's a purpose thing. What do you wish people would ask you about your story? No, I think many people want to see the number. I'd be happy to show it to you. I don't know how you do it with cameras and all that stuff, but you got good technicians. They'll take care of it. And by the way, I'm on TikTok. I don't know if anybody uses TikTok. My grandson put me on TikTok, so there he shows my number. So if any of you want to look it up, I'm there. And I'm there for young people. I love TikTok. I never heard of it before, but now I know that young people use it. So that's where
Tova, you use TikTok to do videos to answer questions about the Holocaust.
Exactly. Absolutely. How do you think Holocaust changed you? Well, no, I'm not a history teacher, but I know that there are places that history is being changed. And not only the Holocaust, but the history of the African American, the history of the Indian killing, how we destroyed a whole nation of Indians. Yeah, it's interesting about history. It changes periodically. So in order to understand the truth, it takes many years of research, because history books do not tell the truth, unfortunately. So any of you who are going to study history, make sure you're good at research, because you will uncover things that what you're teaching is not necessarily so. So just in general, I don't respond to the deniers, because let me give you an example. I used to visit as a social worker, therapist, mental hospitals. One guy came over to me and said to me that he's Jesus Christ. And I looked at him and I said, well, okay, am I going to argue with him? This really not Jesus Christ? No. I said, okay. And I walked away. That's how I feel. If the deniers will come and tell me that there was no Holocaust, I said, you're right. I tattooed myself. It's fine. I did it myself. I give them nothing. I think that the more publicity they get, the worse it is. Ignore them. Walk away. What are some words of hope? I've been doing it for years. I also give it to my older self, not only to my younger self, that there is enough good in people that if directed by other people, they will do good rather than harm. I still don't know to this day what happened to Germany. It's very scary, but if you're aware of it, then look, we have both good and bad inclinations. You all know that. The only thing is, it's okay to hate somebody. That's the way it is. I mean, you can hate somebody. It's not okay to act it out. You can hate your neighbor, but you can't kill them. You know, you can hate your teacher, possibly. You can't stop feelings. You just can't act on it. That's the difference. You
Hey,
can
Tova,
feel- Yeah.
we lost your picture.
How was that? Oh,
I don't know.
Did you?
There we
There
go.
you are.
I pushed it. I put the paper. Thank you. I put the paper on my computer. See
Got it.
that? Not meaning to. I still look the same. I didn't age much, did I? No. um. Do you ever experience survival guilt? Interesting. Yes, I was extremely lucky. Once in a while, not really guilt, but a feeling of responsibility. Like, even when I'm tired, and even if somebody asks me to speak, I say, okay. You know, I just travel to speak in all kinds of places. I just came from Tucson 2 days ago. And I'm going in about a week and a half. I'm going to some other state. I don't even remember the state. And do I want to go, and is this a vacation for me to speak? You know, I sleep, I eat, I speak, I sleep, I eat, I speak. But you know, I feel that's a very important thing. Look, I love the faces of the kids I see. I see the one sitting right here. I see this one. I see that one. I see that one. It's wonderful. And I want you to take it back. There is the greatest pleasure. It's a bittersweet pleasure that I have to tell them that. But I want you to become better people, meaning, let me tell you what it means to be better people. To know, to accept the two sides of yourself. The anger, the jealousy, the hatred, and the love and the beauty, but do not act on the negative, act on the positive. We have both. God created us, if there is a God, I don't know, but we are created. We are created with both feelings, but you have a choice to act. You don't always have a choice of feelings. The feelings come. Oh my God, I don't like this person. Why? I have no idea. But you don't have to go over and kick them. That is a choice. Okay, so that's all I'm telling you. Yeah, right. This little girl goes with her hands like that. You're right. You're right. Exactly. Okay. Oh, what are some of the methods that you use to cope with well, the way I overcome, there I was very obedient. That was one of my things. Shut up and obey. I just did. And I tried to be invisible. But my own healing comes from talking to people like you. Because I do feel, I don't know if it's guilt. I hate to use the word guilt. I never use the word guilt. It's not a good word to use. But you know, I feel like, God, all these kids didn't survive. Look, 1.5 million, you know how the world would have been different. More musicians, more artists, more scientists. 1.5 million innocent children. Their only crime was they were born Jewish. And if you knew some of their deaths, can you imagine children putting into a gas chamber? And just some of them were shot, some of them were drowned. I mean, and I say to myself, I have to speak for them. That's how I cope. I have to speak. Even if I sometimes don't feel well or my voice is going or what, I have to speak for them. So I don't know if it's guilt. I don't consider it guilt. I consider it a growth obligation, an obligation to do that, which I take on happily, and I'm grateful that I have it. I'm grateful to people who invite me so that I can share this, what message do I give to my children and grandchildren? That I'll give it to all of you. What I give to my children is what I give to you. That we are much more resilient than we know. That we can overcome anything. Human beings are made that way. And our bodies are made in a very, if you're a doctor, you know how perfect it all functions together, all the systems, how they can heal themselves, or that terrible, I sometimes like to say, this too shall pass, if terrible things. And that resiliency is what every one of us can develop and have and use. Resiliency. I have a little saying somebody gave me, I can't find it. It's one thing I can't find anything. It says something like, the strength, the things is that you go on even when you think you can't. And you can. And you can. This is also the motto for runners. When the runner thinks they can't make it anymore, they can. And the same thing in life. So I would love to answer individual questions, but I don't know if you were set up for this.
Sure, we could do that. We have individual questions.
Tova, I just wanted to share one thing with you, which is this is everybody in the cast of The Diary of Anne Frank gets a t-shirt. And on the back, you inspired me to have, instead of the list of the cast and crew, I have this listed.
Good. Beautiful.
So thank you for inspiring me.
Thank you very much. That's true. Remember those that aren't here. And be aware, and awareness of what's going on in the world around you. That has to do even with bullying. It's not, we don't have to go as far as Holocaust. We can have a kid who isn't as active or as beautiful or as, I don't know, as smart. Everybody has a right to live since they were born. Their right to be born is the right to live and to thrive the best of their ability. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful play. She was 10 years old. She was quite a bit older. She was about 14, 15. We were in Auschwitz at the same time. She was there a very short time. She was taken out of Auschwitz to it. This is what happens to her age. The work. They survived as long as they could work. But starvation killed her. Starvation and illness. I think she died from illness, or her sister died also. Just another beautiful soul for no reason except that she was Jewish. And look what a wonderful writer she would have become. I mean, there's a girl's hand up. I'd love to hear a question if you have time.
Yeah, she has a question for you.
Are you friends with like the other survivors?
I can't hear it, so.
She wants to know if you're friends with other survivors.
Oh, yes. I am friends with all the 4 children. Or 5, one of you lives in Europe, so I don't know about. But they died. One committed suicide. Would you believe it? Because she could never talk. 2 of us are left. And I am the youngest. I'm the last speaker because the other one is almost 89, 90. She doesn't want to speak anymore. So I am left to speak for my entire town. I am the only left who is not in Florida, not in a wheelchair, not, I'm still here and I remember. So I feel like I have this, it's not even a burden. It is an obligation. You know what? I just got the right word. It's a privilege, not a burden. It's a privilege for my nature, for my body to cooperate. I can be on a plane for 10 hours and my knees don't hurt. So then I say, oh, wow, thank you. Here, terrible echoes.
She wanted to know
Yes.
if your mom told you about her experience.
Okay. My mom died very early after the war. I know her experience because we were together and I knew women's experiences. She lost 150 people. You know, after the war, the Russians were there. We were still in Auschwitz. She kept saying to me, oh, you're going to meet so many wonderful parents. She had 9 brothers and sisters. Oh, you're going to meet, you have nieces and nephews. There were close to 50, 60, 70 nieces and nephews. Do you know when not a single person came back? So her experiences to me was after the war, all she talked about was the loss of her family. And she cried every single day. Her war did not end. She died in 58. 58. So it was like 13, 14 years after we were liberated. That's it. She didn't want to work. She didn't want to live anymore. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
We have another question.
Okay.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for coming to speak with us. It has truly been an honor.
Thank
My
you.
question is, what can we as young people do to help remember the legacies of those who have passed and survived the Holocaust and ensure that the atrocities of the Holocaust never happen again?
Wow, it's a big question, but it's a very
Sorry, it's a lot.
No, but the first thing you have to do is to do a little bit more reading. For instance, you know the story of Anne Frank, you know mine. There are lots of Holocaust survivors. Can I see the boy so I can talk to him? Oh, okay. You know, you have to, it's like everything else, you've got to be educated. Do you know much about the different camps? Do you know about the difference between Treblinka, Majdanek? Have you ever been to any of them? How old are you?
I'm 18 years old.
18. So you're graduating high school. Do you know what college you'll be going to? Are you be going to college?
Yes, I'll be going to college. Not sure which one, but I'm going to college.
You're not sure where. Why don't you, I don't know if you have financial, but again, money is an issue, but there are all kinds of trips. Why don't you go to Europe? I took all my grandchildren to Europe when they were younger than you, so you could know what's going on. Once you see it, it'll be part of you. Don't make it superficial. It's not like you're reading a fiction, a novel. You're reading, you understand. Once you do it, then you can, I sometimes meet people 10 years after that they study Holocaust, they become, so when you become maybe a teacher or you go to work or whatever, you'll be able to talk from you take my experience and make it yours by going and if you can't go there, which I can understand, there are lots and lots of videos that you can watch. You can watch the inside of Auschwitz, and then that's what you can do. Once this becomes part of your life, you will be a different person. You will not be so quick to call somebody a dirty Jew. You just wouldn't, or a black person something terrible. You just wouldn't, because you know the consequences. That's how you can do things. It's got to become part of you, and you will change as a person. You may be perfect already, but I don't know.
Let another question.
Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
Hello. So I had a question, and it was, how was the transition from living in a life in concentration camps and ghettos to living a normal life?
How was oh, it's a good question. Who says I'm a normal life? Yeah, it was, well, you know what helps? I got married. that takes a whole, then having children, then going to school. I have two masters. What you do is you immerse yourself in the normal life. The other one never leaves you. Every time I wear short sleeves, I see my number. It never leaves you. But don't forget, your mind grows. I was a child, and as you grow, other things take over your thought, but you're never the same. You're not the same person. I'm not the same as my neighbors and my friends. And many of my friends, which unfortunately have died already, many have died because I was one of the youngest Holocaust survivors, because we understand each other much better on many levels. But it's a very good question. It took some time. So, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Tova.
Hi. Give
Nice
me
to
your
meet
name.
you. I just wanted to ask,
Okay.
what was the adjustment like coming to America and having to adjust to the life here? What was that like for you?
It was weird. Let me tell you, it was so weird coming to America, and I had long braids and just everything. And I said to myself, those kids are sitting here. I met a little girl who said she was playing piano, and I figured out she was studying piano while I was in concentration camp. I couldn't understand that the world was divided. I thought that my world was everything. As a child, things like that. And then especially when people said to me, "What is the number you have?" When in the summertime, people looked at it, and my teacher said, "Don't talk about it. Cover it up. Nobody wants to hear it." Nobody wanted to hear anything about anything. They even wanted I should change my name. I tried. I was Susan for a few weeks, but I couldn't answer to it. I forgot my name, so I went back to my regular name. It was hard. It was also hard, even food wise at home. I never asked for seconds. I was always afraid my mother doesn't have enough. It took a while, and don't forget, I couldn't read or write. I was 12 until I learned to read or write. And then I was on top of my class once I learned it. So it was hard adjustment, especially when nobody cared. People start caring years later, but in the beginning, nobody believed that it's possible. Nobody believed it, So I just did. I had very few. I moved to a neighborhood where other refugees. That was much easier for me.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Hi.
So my question is, you said you weren't able to like cry or show weakness around the Nazis. So how were you able to like stay strong and like remain hopeful even when you were like terrified that you could like be killed at any moment?
It's interesting. People cannot visualize their own death. Just can't. And the thought that eventually, well, as a child, it was much harder. I thought it was going to be like that. The way people think when they're in these conditions is not in a grandiose terms. They think an hour at a time. If I made it tomorrow, if I got up in the morning, I felt very relieved that I wasn't killed at night for some reason, because kids were taken out at night and killed. If I had something to eat, I was elated. So you don't think most people who survived did not try not to look at the big picture. Like my mother never thought about her family while she was in Auschwitz. She just wanted to live on a daily basis, and the situation is so terrible that you can't think more than an hour ahead of time. Every time when you went to bed, in Auschwitz, and or every time you were counted. By the way, you know, they count. I have a whole episode in the book. I didn't have time to tell here, but when they counted you for hours, and sometimes they would take you out of the line and shoot you, and you have no idea. I mean, nobody knows why. So every time you went back into barrack and weren't killed while you were counted, you thought you were it was very, you were very relieved. It's hard to explain, but you know, people with cancer. Well, I had cancer 25 years ago, and while you're under chemo, you don't think 10 years from now, you think, whoa, today chemo isn't bad. You know, I'm not as nauseous, so maybe I can have a sandwich. It was great. You break down your life in small portions when it's very hard. The luxury is when everything is great, then you can plan ahead of time. Nobody planned ahead of time. Thank you. Oh, thank you for taking that off. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
So you mentioned kind of the dismay that your father and many other people didn't take action when they could have because they thought it was somebody else was going to do that. What advice would you have towards convincing others during our time, especially so far away from the events of the 1930s and 40s, to take action against preventing people like Hitler or other similar fascist
Look around your neighborhood. You don't have to go that far. I don't know what city do you live in?
San Mateo. It's
What
near
is
San
it?
Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco. That's a big city. That's wow. Look at the mayor. I don't know your mayor of San Francisco. You don't have to go that far. I know that San Francisco at one time had a terrible time with homeless. Do they still do? Years ago, one of my friends was very involved in the homeless situation. Look around you every day. You don't have to go to Europe. You know, your job is to take care of your environment. My father lived in a city where things, you know, the Kristallnacht, that's a broken glass. He was in the middle of the Kristallnacht and he didn't do anything. He was happy that his store was not broken or something like that, which is very normal for people to be just involved with their lives. You know, look around. Is your mayor in San Francisco, you think is fair? Are the people, the homeless people, are they getting a right treatment? You don't have to go far. Are they getting food? Are they getting housing? Do good where you stand. And if everybody does it around their area, life will be much better. I mean, you can't go to Europe. They won't even accept you. Besides, you would have made it. You look, what color eyes do you have?
Kind of like greenish brown.
Brown, okay. Well, you know, it's interesting, but your light hair, well, that's half of Hitler youth. You just needed blue eyes, that's all. And you would have survived. Can you imagine such stupid things to kill or not kill a person? I mean, if you study it, you see that a mentally sick man took over, and the Germans went along. I still can't get it. Even me, I can't get it. Anybody have more questions?
I think we have time for one more question.
I'm available.
Hi, Tova.
Hi.
So I was wondering, are you still like practicing Judaism, or how
Oh,
often?
more than ever. I'm very, very Jewish. After the war, I couldn't understand what is this Jewish thing. Kill Jews for what? So I began to study Judaism. I must have been about 11, 12. I went to a rabbi. I said, "What's that?" I go to a class every single morning. I'm 85 almost. I listen to a rabbi. I live in New Jersey, and this rabbi is in Florida, but I like him. So I listen to him. Yeah, I lived in Israel. I did opposite what Hitler wanted. He wanted to destroy Judaism. I became a very strong Jew. I'm kosher. And so are my grandchildren. My entire family is very Jewish. We send them to day schools. And I wanted to have 6 children for each million, but I stopped at 4. It was so hard. Not everything, what you want happens. Yeah, I'm a very, very strong Jew. I love Israel. I like my people. Doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that the Israeli government doesn't have problems, just like our government. But on the whole, I'm very, and I guess I'm also lucky I live here, because maybe Midwest, I'd have a harder time practicing. What religion are you?
I'm Jewish.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you know much about Judaism?
Yeah, my whole family's Jewish.
Oh, good. Good. We did give the world the 10 Commandments. I had a very funny story I want to tell you quickly. I have many clients, and one day I was wearing the 10 Commandments. I have a gold, like a little thing somebody gave me with a Torah scroll and 5 commandments on each side. And one of my clients says, "Mrs. Friedman, I thought you were Jewish." I said, "Yes. Why are you wearing our 10 commandments?" And she's Catholic. I said, "Oh, now it's yours. Good. I'm glad you accepted them." And then I had to tell her that Jesus was Jewish. That was too much already, But it's interesting how people learn in school about religion. Well, I'm ready for more questions, but you probably are not.
I think
Thank you so much.
we're running out of time. We need to
Okay.
get back to class, but thank you so much for
Okay.
coming and speaking with us. It's been such a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you for having me very much.
Thank you so much, Tova.
Thank you very much. And I'm so proud to the powers, whatever they are, that this worked.